Thank you for inviting me. Thank you for the organization, Paolo, once again. And so I am Tom Chevalier. I am originally from Sciences Po. I did my PhD there in Paris. And, but I am now conducting another research project as a postdoc at Harvard-University at the Center for European Studies. And so basically I will tell you the core argument of my PhD dissertation, which will be published rather soon, I expect. Maybe next year, we'll see. So I will show you like the basic argument which relate to the to young people, basically, and the welfare state. And it's a comparison of Western European country and trying to understand the different kind of regime, different kinds of families, of the different policies targeted at young people. So basically, it's the end of the research that I will present, not as Katharina. I will not present you the construction of the research, but if you have some question about that, I will be happy to answer your question. So basically, first, the beginning to how to conceptualize young people's autonomy, because if I want to take into account policies promoting young people autonomy or young people independence, I first need to understand what I am talking about, all right? So to understand that, young people's autonomy, first, we need to understand what is this called in the literature the tripartition of the life course, because young people and youth is a kind of situation, a kind of period in the life course. So what it is, what does it mean in this broader perspective of the life course? First, we need to understand that all the way along the 20th century, youth didn't exist. Okay, it's a new stage of life now. Why I say that it didn't exist before? Because there were the young people of 20 years old, 21, etc. Because basically institutions have created these 2-3 periods in the life course: childhood, adulthood, and old age. And basically, the 3 age periods have been created by institutions by, for instance, age limitations, for instance, the end of compulsory education, but also a kind of social activity that people are supposed to do. When you are in childhood, you are supposed to be in education. When you enter adulthood, you are supposed to access employment. And when you become old, then you retire. You have a pension. So basically, the creation of the mass education system, the creation of the pension system, all different kind of policies have created 3 periods in the life course over the 20th century. And this has led to the standardization of individual trajectory, which means that basically everybody goes through the same kind of periods. Everybody go to school, everybody is supposed to find a job, everybody get a pension. And so in this configuration, youth does not exist. You see, you are directly, you become directly an adult after being a child. And so you are not young in this configuration. So what does it mean that youth has now become a new stage in life? The birth of youth, it's related to the transformation of the life course and the complexification of the entry into adulthood. First, with the postponing of the age of the transition. So you end your education later, you enter the labor market later, you have children later, etc., etc. All the different kind of transition that are supposed to allow you to become an adult are passed at a later age. Then there is a desynchronization of transition. In the 20th century, it's basically you and your study, at the same time you get a job, at the same time you leave your parental household, and at the same time you get married and you have a child. Basically, this is the idea of the synchronization of transition. You are a child, and then you cross all the different kind of transition at the same moment, and you become an adult. Starting from the 70s, there is desynchronization. That means that you can, for instance, I don't know, you leave your parental house, but you are still in education. Or you are still in education, but you have a child. and so on and so forth. The different kind of transition are not passed at the same time. And then, last thing, there is what is called in the literature the yo-yoization of transition, which means now they are reversible. You can enter the labor market, but you get unemployed, so you start again your study. Or you leave your parents' house because you found a job, but you get unemployed, so you come back to your parents' house once again. Okay? And so this is the kind of idea of yo-yoization of the transition into adulthood. And basically, with these different trends, there is this new kind of period of transition between the childhood and adulthood that has emerged. And this is what we call in the literature youth. And so youth has now become a new stage of life. So once I said that, how can I understand youth autonomy? So youth autonomy can cover different kinds of definition, but in my research, I focus on the idea of financial independence, which means to what extent young people, in this period, can have different kinds of income, support, money that will allow them to live. All right? So this is the idea of financial independence. And once I said that, I define the youth welfare citizenship. So basically, youth welfare citizenship, the idea that I want to make with this concept, with this expression, it's all the different kind of policies that promote this access of young people to financial independence. Because the state can help young people in access to this kind of independence. And this is the idea of the youth welfare citizenship. How the state can promote young people's independence. So, once I said that, okay, this is the general idea, all right, the general concept. This is happening in every Western European country. In all Western European countries, there is the emergence of youth as a new stage of life, and there are some policies targeting at young people and trying to promote their independence. And still, there is a huge degree of variation between the different countries. And so the second step of the analysis is how can I make sense of this cross-national diversity? So I came up with this typology based on 2 dimensions. These 2 dimensions relate to the different kinds of intervention of the state in order to promote young people autonomy. The state basically can promote the autonomy in 2 ways. The first way is, okay, I will help young people enter the labor market. Because when they enter the labor market and when they access employment, they have a revenue, they have a salary, and so they can access independence. So the state can help young people access employment. But the other intervention of the state is, okay, I will directly give money to young people. And this is the idea of the social aids of the state. So basically, these 2 different interventions of the state are the 2 dimensions of my typology. The first, the first intervention is what I called the economic citizenship, so the public intervention to smooth the school-to-work transition. And so it relates to 2 realms of policies. On the one hand, education policies, so it covers a lot of different instruments, vocational training, higher education, secondary education. And on the other hand, employment policies. And once again, different kinds of policies in employment policies, regulation of the labor market, tax subsidies, creation of direct creation of direct employment, and different kinds of intervention. And then the second dimension, the second intervention of the state relates to what I called the social citizenship. So these are the different social aids that young people can claim for. And those are family policies with, for instance, the family benefits, student support, so it could be grants and loans, housing benefits, and unemployment support. And unemployment support especially targeted at those young people entering for the first time into the labor market, because there is this idea of unemployment support when it is insurance-based. It depends on your past work, your past contribution as a worker, but young people, if they enter for the first time in the labor market, they cannot access this kind of insurance-based unemployment benefits. So we have to look at other kind of benefits they can access, even though they have not worked before. So basically, these are all the different policies that I am looking at. But then again, we have these policies in all countries. So how can I make sense of the different kind of configuration and the different organization of these policies in different countries? Basically, for each dimension, so we have 2 dimensions, for each dimension, we have 2 strategies. As far as the youth economic citizenship is concerned, we have 2 strategies. One is inclusive and the other is selective. And it all depends on the distribution of skills, because since the 70s, so along the development of youth as a new stage of life, the transformation of the labor market has made skills very important and crucial to access employment. So it all relates to the distribution and the production of skills among the youth population. You can have an inclusive economic citizenship strategy. Basically, the objective is to give some kind of skills to every young people. All right? So the education policies are quite inclusive. So they produce rather low educational inequalities and and few dropouts, which means few young people leaving the education system without a certain level of skills that would allow them to access employment. And then employment policies, they act as a complement of the education policies, which means that actually they will try to give a second chance to those young people leaving the education system without the skills required to access employment. So they will try to give a second chance. And so they will focus first on labor supply, which means on young people, and especially low-skilled young people. And they will focus on investing in human capital by promoting vocational training. So vocational training for low-skilled young people. And for instance, to give an example, the youth guarantee is the symbol of this kind of strategy, giving a second chance to those young people, to those low-skilled young people. The other strategy is selective, in the sense that the education system is really elitist, which means it will not try to give every young people some kind of skills, but it will focus on the elite. It will focus on the elite, on the best, leaving a huge part of the population, of the youth, without any skills, or at least skills required to access good employment. That leads to huge educational inequalities and many dropouts. And then the employment policies will not try to compensate the education system. It will not try to give a second chance to invest in human capital of the low-skilled young people. It will focus principally on creating a second labor market for those low-skilled young people by focusing on lowering, for instance, the youth labor cost. I will try to lower, for instance, the youth labor cost, so the firms and companies will be able to hire these low-skilled young people. But so the idea is not to give low-skilled young people the skills required to have a good job. The objective becomes to give them a job, whatever the quality is, because they are low skilled, so they will have bad quality job. All right. Regarding the youth social citizenship, so regarding social benefits, social aids that young people can claim for, this time it relates to the image, to the representation of youth within the life course. As I said, in the life course, in the tripartition of the life course, childhood is associated to education. Adulthood is associated to work. So young people, what are they supposed to be? Are they more children or are they more adults? And then social benefits will differ according to the representation of youth in that matter. So when young people are considered as children, then it is normal to have legal obligation for parents to take care of their child, even though they are over the civil majority, even though they are over 18, for instance. It's normal because they are still children. And so it's normal that young people have a status of dependent in social security, meaning they cannot claim on their own, to social benefits. It's normal because this is the family, the parents that are supposed to take care of them, not the state. So we will find in this kind of strategy higher age limitation above the age of civil majority, usually around 25. And for student support is really crucial in that matter, because who are students? Students are young people still in education. As I said, when you are in education, in the tripartition of the life course, you are a child. All right? So, are young people still children? Because are students still young children? Because they are still in education. All right? So, if they are considered as still children because they are in education, then it's normal to have family policies to support students. Right? Because the family is still supposed to take care of their child, still dependent, because still in education. And with the grants and loans, the grants will depend on parental income because they are not supposed to promote autonomy. They are supposed to help parents to take care of their children in education. Right? With regard to individualization. The individualization strategy relates to the way, it happens when young people are seen more as adults and not children. That means that we will not find in these countries legal obligation for parents to take care of their child after civil majority. After 18, you are an adult, so your family, your parents, are not supposed to take care of you anymore. So there is no family obligation. Then your status in social security, you are independent, meaning you can claim on your own to social benefits and not through your parents. Age limitation, lower age limitation, would be like the same as for the civil majority or the political majority, so usually around 18. And for student support, as I said, even though you are still in education, you are an adult anyway, and so there is no place for family policy, because the family policy is only for children. And grants and loans are universal, meaning they do not depend on parental income anymore, because they are not supposed to help parents to take care of their children. They are supposed to promote the autonomy of young people while they are pursuing their education. All right? So once we have these two ideas of the two strategy for 2 dimensions, we have like this typology with 4 kind of regimes that we need to, but it's only like the theoretical framework. We need to see what happens when we analyze the real policies in different countries. So this is the empirical part of the talk. I analyze different range of policies and I apply the theoretical framework. So for instance, when there is like lower age limit around 18, I gave a score of 3, meaning individualization. When it is age limit of 25, I give the score of 1, meaning familiarization. And I did this analysis for a different range of policies in 15 Western European countries. And then I ran some cluster analysis. So it's a cluster analysis. It look at the correlation with these different kinds of variables. And so there is 14 variables, meaning 14 policies that I have looked at. And so, I'm sorry, yeah, so the name of the countries are in French, so sorry, but I think it's a little bit transparent, so you can find the countries. So basically, you have, if you look at the different clusters, you have 4 groups of countries. The first one is composed of the United Kingdom and Ireland. Then Finland, Netherlands, Denmark, and Sweden. Third one, this is the biggest one. It's kind of Mediterranean group with France, Italy, Greece, Spain, Luxembourg, Portugal, and Belgium. And then the last cluster, continental country, Austria and Germany. All right? So if you put all the countries in the typology I have created, you have this. All right? So you have like the continental cluster that I call monitored youth welfare citizenship with, on the one hand, a familiarization of youth social citizenship. So young people are considered as children, but you have an inclusive economic citizenship, meaning that you have an education system that limits the inequalities of the distribution of skills. Then you have the kind of Nordic cluster with an individualized social citizenship and an inclusive economic citizenship. Then you have like the Anglo-Saxon cluster with individualized social citizenship and a selective economic citizenship with an education system that creates lots of inequalities. And then you have like the biggest cluster, the denied youth welfare citizenship, with basically all the Mediterranean countries, plus Luxembourg and Belgium, and France being a Mediterranean country for that matter, with a selective economic citizenship, like with education system that are very elitist, so creating lots of inequalities. But then, young people are seen as children, so they cannot access on their own to social benefits. So this is the kind of descriptive part of the work, trying to understand, to identify the different clusters. Then comes the second question. How can we explain that? Why there is this kind of distribution of clusters, this distribution of countries? What are the causes, the origins, the determinants of the different regimes? So this is the second question. The first one is descriptive. The second one is, the objective is to explain this outcome. So to identify the causes of the regime, I have created 2 indexes for each dimension. So basically, all the different variables that I showed before, I did like a mean, if you will, of them, and I created 2 indexes. So basically, we have like this index of economic citizenship and then the index of social citizenship. If we look at the distribution of countries, it's exactly the same as with the cluster analysis. And so basically, I took these 2 variables as what we call dependent variable, which means that the variable I want to explain. To explain the youth economic citizenship, it is about, as I said, the skill formation, the skill distribution among the youth population. And so it relates to the literature, the political economy literature on the varieties of capitalism. There is this huge literature trying to understand the different kind of skill formation regime relating this take to the organization of the economy, the importance of employers, the importance of trade unions. And so I make the hypothesis that macro-corporatism actually will lead to an inclusive economic strategy. Macro-corporatism means the coordination of economic actors between themselves, among themselves, but also with the state. So when you found basically a macro-corporatist setting would mean we have centralized representative social partners very much involved into the policy making of the state. All right? And when you have, the hypothesis would be, when you have this kind of coordination, so all the different economic actors, you will specialize the economy into high-valued sectors, right? And to specialize into high-valued sectors, you need a high-skilled labor force. And that is why, because you need a high-skilled labor force, this is why you would have inclusive economic citizenship, which objective is to promote the skills of young people, all right? And so basically, if we look at the correlation between my index of economic citizenship with an index of macro-corporatism, we can see that there is like a great, actually, correlation, which we can see on this graph. And if we run some like small n regression, so this is only a hint of the argument because it is small n with few countries, so it's not really statistically reliable, but it gives an idea of the causation at work. We can see that actually macro-corporatism is always significant. It has always an effect on youth economic citizenship, even though we control for union density, so the importance of trade unions. Left parties, we could expect that the more left parties have power, are present in office, the more inclusive the policies would be. It's not the case. Social spending, the more the welfare state is important, the more it will be inclusive. It's not that either. The electoral rules and the type of democracy also, majoritarian versus consensus. We could have made an hypothesis with that. It's not the case either. The only variable which remains always in all models significant is macro-corporatism, which underlines the importance of the coordination of different actors into the policy making. So this is to explain the youth economic citizenship. This is an argument about interest and how we can, if there is a coordination of the different interests. This is a very different story for the other dimension with the youth social citizenship. Familiarization in the literature, it is related to the subsidiarity principle of the Catholic Church. The Catholic Church has promoted since the end of the 19th, the beginning of the 20th century, the idea of subsidiarity, meaning we give to the family a huge importance for the distribution of welfare. So we could have, we have these hypotheses about the importance of Catholicism related to the familiarization of youth social citizenship. So I'm going a little bit quick, but actually the most predictive variable is more about Protestantism rather than Catholicism in my sample. So we can see that when there is, when countries are completely Protestant, they have a social citizenship that it is more individualized than other countries. All right? So other is either Catholic or Orthodox, because we have Greece, and mixed, it's like, for instance, Netherlands or Germany, it's a little bit of both. And so if we run some small n regression as well, we can see that Protestantism is significant to explain the individualization of youth social policies, even when we control for Christian democratic parties, left parties, or authority, or the tradition of authoritarianism, sorry, because we would have guessed that if we have like a tradition of authoritarianism, the family will have more power, more importance in the state. This is not the case. It's all about the tradition of the importance of the confession, the religion that is most important in the country. So this is a different, complete different story as for the other dimension, because it is not about interests, it's about ideas and culture. So it's a completely different story. And so, yeah, I will stop here. Yeah, it's 30 minutes precise, so I will stop there.